At the climate talks in Copenhagen, North-South rifts remain after China rebuked the U.S. climate negotiators' extremely irresponsible remarks. And the head of the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change is urging developed countries to specify the details of their financial and technological aid. Shen Le has the full story.
Mr. He Yafei reiterates China's stance on climate change.
China's commitment is very firm. It's not conditional, it's unconditional. What we have committed voluntarily is in full accord with Bali Action Plan. It has a full legal guarantee domestically. I said it before, we will go through the whole legal process. We have a monitoring system inside China. It's real, without any help from external sources. If you have to compare what we are going to do with that of developed countries, I would say proudly what we will be doing is no less than any developed country.
He Yafei responds to the U.S. climate negotiators' comments earlier this week, barring China from receiving aid from Washington.
I don't want to say the gentleman is ignorant. He's very well educated. I think he lacks common sense when he made such a comment vis-à-vis funds for China. Either lack of common sense or extremely irresponsible.
European leaders promised Friday to provide developing countries with 7.3 billion euros or $10.8 billion over 3 years to try to win the support for a climate change deal at the summit. He Yafei says that figure will not be enough in the long term, and the UN has suggested hundreds of billions is required in future decades.
This is not the key. What I'm saying is that it will be relatively easy for developed countries to come up with a number for short term, 3 years. What should we do after 3 years? We are talking here, people are saying we need to commit to a target by 2050. And when it comes to funds, people will say 3 years.
Meanwhile, the executive secretary of the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, Yves de Boer, says an overwhelming majority of countries at the conference want the continuation of the Kyoto Protocol. The conference is proceeding on 2 tracks. One is under the Kyoto Protocol, while the other focuses on long-term and broader issues. Some developed countries have long hoped to converge the 2 tracks so as to evade their binding responsibilities under the Kyoto Protocol, which was adopted in 1997. The UN published an official text from which countries are expected to produce an agreement next week. The text contains a range of scenarios for a deal, but without promises of financing for developing countries, and does not specify emission cuts requirement for developed countries. Shen Le, CCTV.